This is the Seller Process Podcast, where we talk about the best systems, processes, and SOPs for your Amazon business so that you can regain control of your time, build up your team, and scale your e-com empire.
Hello, entrepreneurs. If you're looking to step up from the crowd and start developing new and unique products for your brand, then this episode is for you. Our guest today will share with us the process that household brands use to develop their products and the techniques they apply to create unique items that customers will love. I'm joined today by Renaud Anjoran, a partner at Sofeast, a service provider that helps develop and manufacture new products in China and India. Sofeast sets up the supply chain management in a way that allows for transparency and control. Renaud has more than 18 years of experience working on the ground in China, and he holds several ASQ certifications, including quality engineer and reliability engineer. He was quoted in Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, New Yorker, Fortune, and the Los Angeles Times. Hey, Renaud, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Gianmarco. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. So I'm really curious, to go through this interview because you're an expert in product development and you really know how the pro and the big brands develop new products. But as you may know, most of the Amazon sellers or e-commerce sellers in general, they go very shallow on this. And I think it's really a pity because the most important thing when talking about building a successful brand is the product, the quality of the product. But I see, so many times, especially I have firsthand experience with my clients when I do one-to-one coaching that, they focus a lot on maybe keyword research and listing optimization, which are things very, very important for sure. But, product development, it's a key factor. So I'd like to discuss with you the process that you guys use. And you shared with me initially, the steps of this process and that you call NPI process. So I'd like you to talk about that, and we will first, give us a general overview on that, and then we'll dive deeper into this process.
Okay. Yeah, so as you mentioned, e-commerce sellers tend to spend a lot of time on the tactics and optimization around, products that they can find in a simple way. But at one point, it's like a staircase, right? This is the way I like to talk about it, is that at the beginning, it's very important to keep risks low with the product. There's already a lot of risks with, are we going to find the right demand on Amazon and wherever they are pushing their products, right? But once they understand, okay, we understand the market space, we understand how to get the demand, we understand how to make it all work, then usually they go from simple private labeling of a product to maybe the stair above. The step above is maybe picking an existing product and working with the manufacturer to make a few changes, right? And then at one point, they really want, as you mentioned, really to get to the next level, right? Is to develop their own products from scratch and owning the intellectual property rights and being able to kind of defend them and being very differentiated in the marketplace, right? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. What we call the new product introduction process. I mean, it's not just us, it's a lot of companies call it like that, NPI process, let's say in a simple way, is basically the process of going from an idea all the way to mass production. Okay, and there is a process to that, and I understand this is really the podcast to talk about this. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today, I should make it clear, is for electromechanical products, in a wide sense. Okay, it's a lot of like office products, garden products, like cookware products, a lot of things, a lot of consumer goods, also B2B products fall into this category, whether they are electrical with electronics or not, right? But if it's like a food or beverage product or like a product all made of textile, maybe it doesn't apply very well, for example, right? Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned, the NPI process is to go in a simple way from 1 to 1 million pieces, or 1 to 100,000 pieces, whatever your ambition is, right? You don't go without a process to making 100,000 pieces in mass production. This is a recipe for disaster, and that's why there needs to be a process. And the process, the way we kind of formalized it, there are 6 phases. Now, there's some other companies might come up with different ways to cut it, right? 4, 5, 6, 7 phases. But really, if we go through them really quick, and as you mentioned, there's a presentation about that, is first is, okay, the idea, at least what are the requirements for the product? Okay, what is it supposed to do? Then you do feasibility study, proof of concept, you start to work on the design, but there's still a lot of exploration here. Then you go into prototyping, all you're going the hard stuff of engineering design, etc., right? Until you get to a prototype that looks and works the way you want. And then this is the end of the first 3 phases. The product design is frozen. And then you go into the next 3 phases that are actually more about developing the manufacturing process, not really the product itself, right? And we're going to go into that. Maybe I don't jump into all the details right now.
Okay, perfect. That's interesting. So we're dividing these 6 steps into like 2 macro categories, right? So like it's the discovery phase. The first 3 steps are discovery, and then the second 3 steps, the last 3 steps are the delivery phase. Okay, so let's jump into the discovery phase. So how does it start, and how do we complete this phase?
Okay, so the first half, as you mentioned, is very much about discovery, because when you think of a totally new product, that's really what we're talking about today, right? It's not just, okay, I want the same as this, but with an extra button or something, right? It's really, okay, let's develop something new, innovative, right? New to the market. Well, first, to guide your steps, okay, where is it going to be used? Who's going to use it? What kind of problem is it going to solve for them? You need to plan for this. You need to kind of write a bit of a brief, right? And then there's kind of 2 families of project, right? Some projects, they really need to look very good, like consumer goods. The visual appeal is very important. Then you go into industrial design first. Okay, this is the form factor. It's very, very important. In other cases, maybe more industrial, commercial products, or maybe just products where the aesthetics don't matter so much. Maybe you go first into a proof of concept where you say, okay, these are the 1, 2 main features, and we're going to work on that first, right? Whatever you do, industrial design first, proof of concept first, or sort of the 2 of them at the same time, you need to give a brief to the people who are going to work on that, okay? Very often, your skill set will not extend to, enabling you to doing all of that, right? So you need to give a brief to these people so they know. So you need to sort of write down a bit of a brief. We call that the product requirements, okay? Then the next step, as I mentioned, proof of concept, prototyping, like in a very simple way, industrial design, picking the main components, doing a bit of testing or some research or some feasibility study with some key suppliers, etc., just to explore what is possible, what is not possible, and to think of the main challenges and tackle the main challenges first. Okay. By the time you go into phase 3 of this first half, right, the discovery, you have already found a lot of issues and a lot of rocks that you want to go around, right? Obstacles. Okay. And you kind of have an idea, sort of a view, okay, the product is going to look like this, work like this, and the design is going to be done that way. Then you go into, okay, phase 3, we call it prototyping, but it's really, doing all the engineering design. If there are electronics, the custom PCBA, maybe the custom firmware, maybe there's a mobile app, right? And then there's on the mechanical side, somebody is going to have to draw some of the custom parts, right? The custom components. Now you should. I know you have some questions about the main challenges, but really one I really need to emphasize here is you should try to keep it simple. if this is the first time you go into new product development. Okay, a lot of people, the mistake they make is that they get very ambitious and they go with a V 1.0 product that is very ambitious, and then the development, maybe it should cost them $40,000-$50,000. Actually, it cost them in the end $150,000 with all the certifications and the tooling and everything, because they go really ambitious. If you use some existing products, pre-certified modules, you don't go crazy on the features, you can get to market much faster, limit your risks, get feedback from the market, and then integrate that feedback into your version 2. That's usually the smart way to go at it. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Because as you talk, I can see that many like big companies might go through like these steps in a very thorough way, but sometimes we should kind of strike the right balance between quality and cost effectiveness and timing, right? Because we also want to be fast and cost effective, right? So what is your suggestion, your advice that you would give to sellers in order to kind of have a balance and not be caught up in this in kind of overwhelm of information that they need to supply in this phase?
Right. Keep I would say keep an eye on the major risks of the project. Okay, when you go into developing a new product from scratch, it's not like planning, for a weekend of fun in Disneyland. No, this is really an endeavor that will keep you up at night for maybe 12 months, maybe more. Okay, so be very intentional, be very careful about that. Okay, don't skip market research. Okay, the number one killer, okay, or number two, depending on the studies, is that actually nobody really wants to use it, or people see it as vitamin, not aspirin, right? Yeah, it's nice, would be nice to have it, but then when you say, hey, you have to shell out $100 for it and so on, they're like, yeah, maybe I'll wait for your version 2. I'm not sure, right? That's a big problem. So market research will help you really make the product much better. Okay, what is the target market? How to go after the target market? What are the issues with the competing products? How to get this information, etc., right? And also really mitigate your risks, that the product doesn't have demand when it gets onto the market. That's really a very important one. Another one is don't go into solution mode too fast. You need to think, okay, what is the target market? What do they need? Okay, these are the requirements of the product. And now let's take a step back and let's think what is really the most important here. Okay, try to sort of prioritize, rank the main features, the main benefits, right? And then think, okay, what kind of options do I have here? Very often people are like, okay, this is what they need. And like at the same time, they have this idea of the product. This is what it's going to do, I don't know, if you want to do like a VR headset, like Apple, you're going to be like, oh, okay, it's going to look like this. It's going to do this. Okay, you already have all these ideas, but this is wrong. This is actually starting from your idea, your projection, which usually will be way overcomplicated, rather than thinking, okay, what is the one thing that it could do well? And it could draw already the early innovators, or it could draw really the people that I can reach with my marketing. It would be enough for them to get that, pay, hey, maybe it's 50% cheaper because it's a simpler product. And they're going to have it much faster also in their hands because the development would be much faster and simpler, right? So don't go into solution mode. That's really something that people need to keep in mind. And then finally, you want to be able to sell this product, right? Amazon has a lot of compliance requirements, right? If you don't have all these certifications, test reports, etc., and declarations and so on, you cannot even list it, right? In a lot of countries, depending on the product category, of course. Okay, that's one, but also you want to keep it selling. So you want to have good reviews, right? We're talking about e-commerce sellers here. You want to have a lot of these 5-star reviews. You don't want people to say, well, it broke after 1 week or whatever. Oh, I bought it for Christmas, and like within 1 hour it's broken. You ruined my Christmas, right? So you have to think of compliance, compliance and safety, and you also need to think of reliability, durability. And these two things, you need to think of them from the very start. When you pick the main components, when you put together the architecture of the design of the product, you need to think, you need to ask the right questions. It's a whole other topic in itself. I can go on for hours, but keep these two things in mind. Don't skip them and wonder, oh, what could we do to make it compliant when you're at the stage of sending the samples for certification? It's way too late. It's all based on the design, right? So keep it in mind at the beginning when you start to do design work.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I think compliance it's one of the things that gets, kind of missed most of the time, by e-commerce sellers. They first develop the product and then just before to go to market, they think, oh, is this compliant? And maybe it wasn't engineered or designed to be compliant, or, maybe not the right questions were asked at the right time. So it's kind of too far now to change things, or it may not be too far, but it will take time to adjust and modify stuff. Okay, yeah, exactly. I love that. And also something that you mentioned about, don't be in solution mode. I think that could open up so much more possibilities for creativity, because you gotta stay in a brainstorming mode, right? So like first understanding what's possible. Also, I think it's something very important that I've learned, by doing it, is to understand well the manufacturing process, so that if you know what's possible, you understand what can you change. But if you don't know what's possible, you're just kind of lost and just believe what your factory is telling you. But most of the times, especially if you source in China, they are not really creative or solution oriented. So they will not give you solutions. They will just tell you like the most simple and cost effective way to reach some result. But it might not be the best for your customer. You can come up with something much better. Cool. So those are all great advice. So one thing actually I brought down when you were talking about is the prototype. During the prototyping phase, do you mean like actually creating samples, or it's all about kind of just design, and in this phase it's all on paper?
No, it has to be translated into tangible representations of the design, right? That people usually call prototype. So you think of prototype, basically a prototype is something that you use to validate the latest version of the design. Okay, so it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be the complete product, right? Depending on the product, but it is part of the natural cycle and you do several iterations of this cycle. Okay, you plan for the whole design, but then you plan for the next iteration. Then you set yourself a few targets, right? Okay, we get to the point where the prototype can do this or this or look like that. Okay, then you do the engineering design. Then you build the prototype. Okay, so you need to buy some parts, etc. You build it. Then you test the prototype, and you send it maybe also for user reviews and so on. I mean, just people to like from the target market, right, to play with it and give you feedback. And then you review all of this feedback, and you decide, okay, the plan for next iteration. This is a whole cycle. And at the very beginning of the discovery steps, let's say, it doesn't even have to be tangible at all, right? There's a lot of things you can do just with renderings, designs on the screen, and then maybe you mock it in cardboard or whatever. Maybe you buy an existing product out there that has like the main functions is what you want. Now your product also does ABC and doesn't do these things, but whatever. It's existing product. Then you kind of, I don't know, you put some tape on it, say, okay, like this doesn't exist, and it also has this, and then you go out and get some feedback. And it's amazing how much feedback you can get. And people will say, well, but it has to be that size. Otherwise, there's no way I can use it. I cannot put it in my car or something, right? You get all kinds of feedback that you would not even think of. So at very early stages, don't think of really building prototype, right? You can go through this cycle of learning and improving in a very quick way at the beginning, and even test several options. That's really the best practice, right? As you get further and further along, yes, you need to build like full prototype that look and work, as close to required as necessary, until you say, okay, like that's it, right? At one point, remember, the first iPhone did not have cut and paste. Steve Jobs just said, there's a line in the sand, and after this date, that's it. We stop improving. We have to go into manufacturing. Like we have to go into delivery. Stop working on making the product better. Like we freeze it. That's for version 2, right? iPhone 2. And you have to have the discipline to do that. As long as it meets the number one biggest requirement from customers, there's got to be a point where you say, okay, I've spent the budget, I've spent the time. I cannot keep going through that. Because if you're too perfectionist, you will keep going round and round and round, and the product will never go to market.
Right. Okay, that's great. Yeah, this is all great advice. Very interesting. Okay, so then at this point, then we are kind of done with the the first 3 phases. And by the way, actually, I really loved the idea of kind of putting tape on a product, or just kind of transforming manually an existing product, right? So you don't have to be perfect. You can even do it kind of by yourself, right? You can create
Totally.
like a Frankenstein product by yourself, just to show it to customer and get feedback. I think this is a very smart advice. Okay, cool. So then we should go then to the second part, the delivery phase. What happens then? And what's the kind of the trigger? You said like at some point we decide, okay, this is gonna be the final version, and
you
what
freeze
happens?
the product design. Basically, you freeze the product design and say, now we're done. Okay, now it's not like one day you go from phase 3 to phase 4, which is okay, like going into tooling and so on and so forth. You need to start engaging the manufacturer. I think you mentioned that earlier. You need to start engaging a manufacturer when you're doing prototyping. And even sometimes even earlier, because the manufacturer will allow you to know what is feasible, not feasible. This will be a great help. They will actually tell you what, this enclosure that you, what is it going to be? Plastic? But, it cannot be made by injection molding. There's like no way. You can 3D print it, yeah, sure, but that's it. Then it cannot go into mass production. Oh, okay, then we need to think differently, a different shape, right? This is a dumb example, but happens every day, I'm sure. So you need to sort of engage a manufacturer and get feedback from the manufacturer along the way, so that it is so that it is designed not to have a good prototype, but it's designed for manufacturing. Okay, it's designed to be ready to be manufactured in large volumes, right? There's really a big distinction here. Okay, so you start to engage a manufacturer during prototyping. Then at one point you say, okay, that's fine, that's good. Now let's go into phase 4 and phase 5, and then finally phase 6, which is mass production. So what are these 3 phases? So in the US, and especially in consumer electronics, they have these acronyms which are getting more and more popular. It's EVT, DVT, PVT, and MP. Okay, so when you are finalizing the prototypes, you do what they call engineering validation testing. So the prototypes are actually there to be validated through testing and user feedback, right? If you confirm that, okay, it actually works, the engineering of the product is okay, all right, then let's go to next step. We call it tooling in a simple way, all right? Because most of the products that we work on, they have some custom mechanical parts, and there's got to be some tooling of some sort, very often plastic injection molding kind of tooling, which takes like 5-6 weeks, right? So there's a whole phase about that. Once you have this, you have some parts coming off of tooling, you check them up, dimensionally, aesthetically, they're okay, all right. Put together an engineering build. So these are, again, prototypes. But these prototypes are usually used more for having a golden sample. And you approve and you say, okay, this is the aesthetics exactly that I want, etc. Right? And then once you have that, now you might think, okay, let's go direct to mass production. No, no, no. This is a trap. Okay, there's something called very often PVT, production validation testing, after the tooling, which is really for in large part for the design validation testing, they call it, the appearance of the product, etc., how it fits, and doing the final validation of all the parts together. Then you actually really work just on the manufacturing process, the final manufacturing process. You really need to go through this phase. You really need to do a pilot run of 50 pieces, 100 pieces. It really depends on the product, the complexity, the size, and so on. But you need to do at least one pilot run with manufacturing intent processes. So meaning everything has to be made exactly the same way it's going to be made for mass production. Because this is the way to have a lot of the issues come out when you can still iron them out without very heavy economic consequences. Okay, because when you go into a batch, okay, 1,000 pieces, 5,000 pieces, and you find out at that time that 50% of them have a quality problem because of such and such issue, right? Or whatever, or the manufacturer tells you, oh, we get to raise the price because we just notice actually is much slower than it should be. I'm sure you heard that before, right? Extremely common. So you don't want that. You want them to really confirm, no, it's okay, we did a pilot run. These are the issues, we're fixing them. This is fixed. Okay, nothing critical. We're going to go into mass production, and they confirm that there's no major issue, major open issue, right? And you should probably be engaged there, or have your engineers go on site, or work with some external service providers or whatever. But you need to follow up on that. The problem in China is that very often they will say yes, 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 okay, no problem. They will not give you any details. And you will have to assume, you will have to hope that actually, yes, they did all of that engineering work and manufacturing, validations and so on. But the risk is that if you don't actually have some presence on site, they will just skip it. Because they don't want to do it, because they want to go directly into mass production, because guess what? They make money through mass production. So they want it to come as fast as possible, and they want to waste as little time before that. It's very short-sighted, but I'm very sad to say, if you take out the very big companies, of course, the Huawei, Lenovo, and so on, of course they do it very well, because they work with a lot of companies that have really taught them how to do it, and they recognize it. No problem, they know how to do it very well. But when you go 1 or 2 tiers below that, it just doesn't happen in most cases, except if you really insist and you're on site. That's really something to keep in mind.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. I think it's a step that it's most of the time, not even considered. People may not be even aware of that. One thing I've learned, through going through the process a few times for my products, is that many times samples and prototypes are not made in the same way of mass production is made, right? Like as you mentioned, but some people may not know that. So some factories, depending what category it is, what product it is, they're maybe not forced, but they prefer to create samples in a different way, that it may be more manual compared to the mass production way, right? So just to give you a sample, but then that's not going to be the golden sample that we're looking for, because it's not exactly a copy of what you will receive when mass production will come.
Yeah,
right?
The key, I would say, the golden sample, okay, as long as it's made, for example, with part out of tooling, if there are custom parts made from tooling, etc., it's fine. That's like a standard, right? This is the standard to match. But the problem when they put together, 5, 10 samples, 20 samples, 40 samples in another way, just built together by some engineers or a few technicians, like totally off the line and so on, is that they are projecting that there's no risk, or like they don't need to actually do the validation, right? Okay, we know that, no problem, right? So the problem is that very often they don't know their limitations, and they very much underestimate the risk. Okay, and every new product, if it's a new product, innovative product, there's nothing exactly like it, and this factory has never made exactly something like it, there are risks, right? And if you do a purely theoretical, conceptual risk analysis, you can think of a lot of things. But I can tell you, when you actually do it as a pilot run exactly in mass production, etc., not just in assembly, right? But ideally also the guys who make the plastic parts, the PCBA guys, etc. You have you surface some issues sometimes that you never thought of, or that you thought were very low risk, and guess what? It's so much easier and faster and cheaper to fix it on 50 pieces than on 5,000 pieces, right? Because 5,000 pieces, if you're the buyer, at the end of the day, you will end up paying for it, right? Especially if you don't catch it in production, they ship it to you, then you pay it multiple times, right? But anyway, they're gonna have to rework it. They're gonna have maybe to change their process. They're gonna raise the price on you. Do you want, and there's gonna be production delays. At the end of the day, you are taking a lot of the risks, right? So you need to take that more into your hands, basically.
Okay, yeah. This is very great advice. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so now we're we covered the full phases, the 6 steps. I have just a couple of questions before we close. Do you use any tools or templates or spreadsheets that helps you in this process? Or how I'm just looking at like the documentation, like how do you work with that?
So basically, there's a presentation that we shared, with you and your audience, is important to really explain to the different parties. Okay, this is at a high level the way it works, etc. Okay, this is the framework that makes sense. Then we have some more detailed spreadsheets, and this is very useful in planning, because no 2 projects will be planned exactly the same way. Now, I can take an example for, okay, let's say your product reliability is very important. You're going to have to do some testing to make sure, make sure it's waterproof, make sure it can withstand, high heat, vibrations, etc. Okay, just some examples here. You need some samples for that. You could do it at the end of the tooling phase with the parts of the tooling put together by some engineers, okay, and goes into reliability testing and so on, okay. Or it could come from the products that come from the pre-production pilot run, right? It's 50 pieces, 100 pieces, right? Put some of them aside, send 10 to the lab for reliability testing, right? For example. Depending on how much of a hurry the buyer is in, depending on how many samples are going to be made after tooling, etc., might make sense to make it earlier or later. Exactly the same topic comes up with compliance or certification testing. Exactly the same. And very often people say, no, we don't really want to wait. Like, we're just going to go straight, tooling, then pre-production pilot run. And then, like, in parallel, we're going to do the testing for certification and also launch mass production. Okay, so what happens if the product actually doesn't pass certification testing? Yeah, that's a bit of a problem, right? So do you want to take the risk or not, right? So there's this kind of dialogue very often that needs to take place with the customer, right? With the product developers. So the project can be really tailored to their own needs, and it very much has to be tailored to the risks of the project, right? Because the process is really there to reduce the risks, to make things much more predictable and consistent, right? So I would say, yes, going into the detail, usually in an Excel spreadsheet is the easiest thing to do that, we found. And in a way that really makes it easy for all the parties to collaborate, right? And then really beyond the tools of technology, I would say communication is very important. Don't try to make things very complicated with Gantt charts that nobody really will look at. And anyway, Gantt charts are never updated, right? So don't go into these kind of things. A lot of communication, make it easy, but at the same time, document what is important, right? Document the quality standard, document what was agreed on, etc. in a master document. Otherwise, you'll be completely lost.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Makes sense. Okay, so I think we covered a lot today, and we catch the target time for the episode. So obviously this process is very complex, and people get lost very easily. So your company it's actually helping sellers go through this process, right? So share with people how can you help them, and if they're interested in developing new products using this process and using your services, how can they find you and what can you help them with?
Basically, go to sofeast.com, sofeast.com, or find me in LinkedIn. I'm sure my name will be somewhere in the show notes. Drop me a line. I'm happy to sign an NDA or send us our NDA template. But we can talk about your project, and I can tell you if it's a good fit for China manufacturing, for example, or for India manufacturing. And I can tell you what I think. Roughly, right, in terms of budget, timelines, and like main challenges. We're happy to have these discussions at the beginning, of the planning phase, let's say, of a project. So that's really where a lot of value is created. Don't go straight into a project without thinking, without talking to people who worked on new product developments, right?
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great. Thank you, Renaud. Remember, guys, there is also, as in every episode, there is a complimentary resource that the guest is sharing with us. So in this case, Renaud is sharing the slides with these 6 phases. So you can download them from our website, thesellerprocess.com. Find in the show notes there is a link for you to download it, or in the description of the YouTube video. Okay, so you'll find these slides with more information about these 6 steps that we just shared. Okay, thank you again, Renaud. Guys, just last reminder: the key to success is to emulate the best. So take action on the tips that Renaud just shared with us, and apply the tips, apply the insights, take action on all this to create better products for your brand. And I hope you like the content that we shared in this week episode, and I wish you a productive week, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. Hey entrepreneurs, I hope you enjoyed the episode and learned something from the interview. If you're serious about creating systems for your business, automating processes, and building up your team so that you can transfer the tedious daily tasks in order to focus on more high-level strategic tasks and work on your business and not in your business, I've created a guide for Amazon sellers named Capturing Systems and Creating SOPs that you can find at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook, where you will learn how to leverage systems and SOPs in your Amazon business so that you can accomplish more by working less, optimize your time, automate and delegate tasks, and reap the benefits of being a true business owner and not simply an operator in your own business. Go download the ebook at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook and start implementing all the tips and insights that I share with you. And leave us a review or a comment to let us know how the content we are sharing here is making an impact in your business. And have a productive week.